This is the July 15th, 2024 monthly meeting of the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. My name is Diane Cece. We have Board Advisory Member Roberta Di Bisegli, George Hensinger. So just very quickly to walk through the agenda, we have some announcements regarding the Walk Bridge project and the East Norwalk Station closures. I'll go through those in a minute. Most of what you're going to see tonight is actually was posted in our e-newsletter email blast this weekend. So we'll be going over those items and then anything new. We'll also be getting an update from Roberta Di Bisegli, who represents ENNA on the Veterans Memorial Park Shoreline Restoration Project. We don't have a guest speaker tonight. We were hoping to have one or two of our local police department members, but the scheduling didn't work out, so we may have them. If we have an August meeting, we may have them then, and if not, we will have them in the fall. There's a number of initiatives that are going on with the police that we'd like the community to be aware of, and then just have it in like an open session for a dialogue with them. And then we'll give some updates on current business, which we keep moving Cemetery Street back and forth between current and old and new, but we have some updates on that we can elaborate on from the email news blast that we sent, and also a little bit on Jimmy's Deli on Van Zandt. And again, I'm sorry to harp on this, but we do still need volunteers. If people will reach out to us, you're actually reaching out directly to two board members when you email us. If you can please reach out and just say that you have any interest at all, then we'll be happy to contact you via email or phone and talk about what you might be interested in. We find it easier for people to volunteer when they're looking to work on something that they're either passionate about or something that they want to learn more about. So we can certainly talk about what opportunities we have that we need volunteers for. And also our required September annual board meeting is coming up in a couple months, and we would like to entertain some community members to self-nominate or be nominated to join our board of directors. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit under new business of a project you may have seen a little bit about called the Norwalk Municipal District Reapportionment regulation, and what that means and what's going on to comply with that. And I put here that our next meeting is to be determined because we may take for everyone and for us to take an August break. That is subject to any new zoning applications coming in or any other quality of life or governmental issues that may need us to have a meeting there. Okay. So just quickly, just want to go over what was in the email to bring everybody up to date on the Walk Bridge activity. And I want to first remind people that when we say the Walk Bridge, it's not just literally the Walk Bridge, the bridge that goes over the Norwalk River. The Walk Bridge project is a very all-encompassing project that impacts from South Norwalk over to East Norwalk, and also portions of the Danbury line as well. And so when we say the Walk Bridge activity, we're talking about the scope that's within Norwalk. And right now we're focusing on East Norwalk. And so while this project has really been active in earnest for some time now, you know, the work that's been going on East Avenue, et cetera, over at Fort Point Street, it's really shifting into high gear, moving forward on all of the bridge work. And in conjunction with that, a lot of the road work as well. And so this is going to be, we expect to be in high gear for the next 4 years, shifting from portion to portion within East Norwalk, and sometimes some of the bridge work and road work happening simultaneously. You can generally expect either road closures, lane closures, and detours at various times. Some of the work gets done overnight. Some of the work gets done from a Friday to an early Monday morning. And some of the work will be, you're going to see in a minute when I talk about Osborne, is going to be a multi-month long closure 24/7. The project impacts four bridges that are in our area: Fort Point, Osborne, East Avenue, and Strawberry Hill bridges. The Strawberry Hill Railroad Bridge, not the one over the highway. What we recommend is because dates and times can change and activities are posted for all kinds of utility work, construction work, bridge work, etc. We continue to encourage people to sign up directly at the Walk Bridge CT site because the latest information is going to come from them. It'll get posted, and then they also email out to people that have signed up for their email information. And so sometimes it's hard for ENNA and other stakeholder groups to get that information and then get it out to you in a timely manner. So we really encourage you to sign up for their communications. And also you can feel free to communicate directly with the Walk Bridge public communications staff. That consultant group manages all of the project management and public engagement. And so you can email them as well. So just as a quick reminder, to get all the information on all the components of this project, including some graphics, some timelines, and detailed project scopes, you'll want to visit walkbridgect.com. And then to communicate with the folks up there, generally you'll be speaking with Stephanie Pelletier, who's very helpful, very responsive, and keeps us in the loop here. You'll want to email info@walkbridgect.com. Okay. Oh, and then just to go back here for a second, sorry about that. So in the email newsletter blast that we sent out this weekend, we spoke about the closure of the East Avenue, of the East Norwalk train station. And so this is the second of what we now know will be four longer term closures of the station in 3-week chunks. And this one is going to be August 17th through, I think it's August 17th through September 7th. And again, that's all in our email, and it's going to be, if it wasn't posted today to the Walkbridge site, it will be posted there this week. So the closure of the station itself in its entirety, no service at all, is going to be from August 17th through September 7th. It's a 3-week closure, and they intend to have a similar setup for shuttle service to take commuters over to the South Norwalk station. And they'll be posting schedules, how that's going to work, and their alerts on that website that I just gave you. We also had directed some folks who were concerned with the fact that in the last closure, there seemed to have been some hiccups. And of course, they're kind of learning about what they need to adjust as they go. But we understand that there may have been little or no accommodations made for commuters and other folks who are part of off-peak commuting or using the station for other purposes. And so we've asked folks to reach out directly to the Walkbridge folks and make sure they're aware of that. We find sometimes people are posting these concerns just on social media and among themselves, only to find out that the Walkbridge team actually hasn't heard about them. So if you have a particular need or concern regarding your commuting or train station needs, then we encourage you to reach out directly to them. And if it's something important, then that they're going to share with everyone, they'll get it to us as well. Okay, so with that, we'd like to have Roberta Di Bisegli represents us on the Veterans Memorial Park Restoration Project, which is in conjunction with the believe the Maritime Aquarium, the Norwalk River Valley Trail Initiative, and I think there's one other, Roberta, so forgive me, but maybe you can tell us on that.
So I don't know how many people are aware of this, but the city of Norwalk has received some grant money to do a feasibility study to mitigate the flooding in Vets Park. They have hired a ecological consulting firm called Biohabitats. Really interesting, smart folks. And the people that are on this committee are people from the Maritime Aquarium, the City of Norwalk, Norwalk River Watershed Association, and there are a bunch of other stakeholders. And I'm basically there to listen and to represent those of us in East Norwalk. So I want to just start off by saying if you have any questions after this, please feel free to direct them to me. And if I don't have the answer, I'm happy to bring it to the committee as well. So there were about 15 people at the last meeting attendance, which was on June 25th. We were shared a whole bunch of fantastic slides, and maybe next time I can actually get the PowerPoint if people are really interested in actually seeing the images as well. But there was a lot of historic imagery. Many of you know that Betts Park is completely man-made. It was known as Duffy's Field for a long time. It was also, there was a lot of dumping going on there. Um, so we got to see maps about what it looked like a while ago and what it looks like now. There were a lot of flora and fauna observations that were shared with us. And then there was a discussion about the ecological typologies. There's high marsh, there's low marsh, there's mud flat, etc. I mean, I learned a lot about this. I'm a horticulturist, but I know a little bit about ecological restoration, but not a ton. The infrastructure, as most of us who live around here know, drainage is an issue. There's localized flooding during storm and rain events. That parking lot is underwater a lot of the time, and the walkway around the water is eroded. So the design objectives are to improve public access along the shoreline, mitigate flooding and increase site resilience, restore and enhance habitat, and reduce erosion of shoreline and park infrastructure. Part of my concerns are that it feels to me like the city is got a mission to sort of activate Vets Park in a way that might not be fantastic for the neighborhood, may not be fantastic for the wildlife restoration that we're trying to do there. And by that, I mean loud events, amplified music, a lot more traffic into that park. So I'm really listening to what they have to say and hoping that the city prevails and really restores the park in a natural way and also creates an atmosphere that will be good for quiet enjoyment of the park rather than any more oyster festivals. I think one oyster festival a year is plenty. We also are now hosting Pride at the park. I think that that's more than enough for what's a relatively quiet residential neighborhood. Others may not agree with me. We're all open to our feelings and opinions about that, but that's where I stand on it, and I know a lot of my neighbors feel the same way. So we talked about how to use marsh plants to combat erosion and adapt to sea level rise, how to maintain the health of the existing trees from salt water, how to realign, reimagine the pathways to accommodate increased flooding. Talking about just really like how to deal with that shoreline erosion on the southern end of the park. It's a real issue, and there are a lot of different ways of looking at it, and they're going to have to basically measure the costs, which are going to be significant because this is just a feasibility study right now. This is not about shovels in the ground. This is about what's the state of the park now and what do we envision it to be in the future. Also, we talked about promoting shellfish restoration on the soft substrate in the park. At this point, the next steps are to process feedback and refine alternatives, develop the feasibility study and alternatives analysis report, consider regulatory site and cost constraints, and recommend preferred alternative and future design tasks. That's where we are right now with the project. It's moving pretty slowly, but it's interesting, and I'm finding it really positive because there have been so many things that have been so difficult in the neighborhood lately. But this gives me a little shred of hope that maybe there will be good things happening for Vets Park and we can have a shoreline that we can all enjoy. That's what I got for you, everybody. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. We may as well open it up to questions while we're on this topic. So if anyone has their hand up, I think I will be able to see that. Okay, let me just make sure I'm seeing everyone.
And if
Okay, I
you know
don't
you
see.
all, oh, sorry.
I was going to say I don't see any hands up right now, but if somebody thinks of something when we come to Q&A, are you staying on, Roberta?
Yeah, I'll be
Are you good?
staying on. And also, if anyone thinks of anything after the meeting and you have any questions or comments or concerns, just, give an email over to info@eastnorwalk.org. Did I get that right, Diane?
Yep. Yep.
Info@eastnorwalk.org. And
Yep.
and Diane will shoot it over to me. And if I can't
Yep.
answer, I'll be sure to get it done.
Thanks
But
so much. And
thank
actually, we just
you.
had a question come into chat. It looks like about is there a timeline that's associated with the completion of the feasibility study?
Um,
So, which
Actually, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that.
okay,
I am making a big assumption that it's going to be at least another few months, but
okay,
I can definitely find that out and let you know. These
thanks.
things
Okay.
don't move very quickly.
Yeah. And, this is one case too. And usually the RFPs that go out for these consultants will have some sort of a deadline. I tend to be on the side of the fence that says I'd rather take a little bit more time on these things and get it right than to comply to what somebody's arbitrary date was in the beginning. I just have two comments on this though, Roberta.
Mhm.
One is, um, I don't think that I've ever done or asked any volunteer to do any comparison of where this is leading to with the feasibility study and what you folks are looking at versus what is now a complete rewrite blows my mind, but another complete rewrite of the master park plan. And
Mhm. Mhm.
so while a lot of this was probably in sync with the original master park plan that our community embraced, um, and I'm not saying that it's no longer. I'm just saying that I don't recall that I ever kind of compared those two. And I think if they're kind of going in two different directions, it might be a good idea for us to do that so that you can course correct or somebody can course correct so that, restoration isn't going in a separate direction than what somebody else's idea for more active use of the park could be. Exactly to what you were talking about before. And then the other thing I want to say is just to get on the soapbox again is that a lot of times these studies have to do with feasibility and viability, etc. And they kind of skip the point of desirability. They get so far along the
Mhm.
road that they're not really going back to say, is this something that the community either asked for or B, didn't know they could have, and now they're embracing it. So I think
Well,
I think that's good too.
yeah, I can totally hear that, Diane, and it is important to be looking at this vis-a-vis what the community wants. I mean, and that I kind of see as my role in this, to really be clear on that. But so far, I mean, you can see, I mean, I have a lot of respect for this ecological consulting firm. I mean, these guys are really good. And so far, if this is what's going on,
Mhm.
this is kind of good. I mean, we
Good.
do want to deal with
Mm,
with flood control or mitigating the flood events that happen
mm,
there,
yeah,
restoring the shoreline, making sure that the existing trees are protected, maybe doing better planting on that
yeah,
berm. Um, I mean, there's really I
mm,
don't have a lot of bad stuff to say about
yeah.
what they
It's good.
presented so far.
And it's
Um,
really
I,
good to hear because that's in line with how they actually presented this. And so it doesn't seem like there's been any kind of creep that led in a different direction. Because I mean, I know we were all excited about it when we read the first description for, what kind of an impact this could have ecologically. And I think and I'm assuming on the wildlife too, like on waterfowl and wildlife that has to do with marshes and that type of environment at the shoreline. So super excited as this moves along.
yeah, so far so good. I mean, let's just hope that the city, doesn't overactivate the park because that's sort of going to defeat the purpose of this.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because really and truly, it's great to be using the park for quiet enjoyment, but we have to balance that with what's going on with Mother Nature. And if there's like more than one oyster festival there,
Right, exactly.
there's
Yeah,
going to be issues,
yeah,
So anyway, so we'll see where it all flies. But for right now,
yeah.
I'm really feeling positive about the
Excellent.
direction they're taking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the share. Okay, back to you, Diane.
Okay, so next thing up on the agenda, I wanted to go through what I mentioned earlier, some updates on Cemetery Street project. A couple of things have been going on with that. One of which is that when they got their approval to do the Mill Pond development there were a number of conditions imposed relative to their approval, some of which had to do with regulations in the zone that require them to come back to the P&Z Commission to review specific modifications that can happen with the building facade and the layout and roof lines and materials, etc. So that meeting actually took place. It was not a public hearing. It was simply a presentation to the commission and to get their blessing from for the developer to go ahead and move along with the plan. One of the reasons this is kind of like a stopgap measure that they put in so that a developer doesn't get too far along with their plans and money and materials, only to find out that it doesn't comply with what the intent of the commission was. So on July 10th, the P&Z Commission reviewed this. ENNA posted that video so that you can watch it. It's also posted on our YouTube video and of course on the city's YouTube video site. The first thing that they did confirm that was a little confusing to me, I'm going to try to get some more information on this, but one of the things that the applicants had to do over there was confirm whether or not the DOT was going to require a second driveway exit there. And I guess that had been still up in the air, although I had thought it was decided long ago. But apparently the DOT responded that they are not requiring a second driveway exit. So beyond where I don't think anything has changed, but beyond where the driveway would come out, kind of where the island is there, looks to be the same place. They also reviewed some what I consider minor modifications with the roof lines and materials. There were some adjustments that make it a little bit better visually, so that we just don't have like this kind of boxy roof line going across. But I do have to say, when you take a look at the before and after pictures in the presentation that we posted, I think most of these differences or modifications are relatively minor, and they're actually hard to discern. I'm going to go back and watch them myself again. Unfortunately, this particular developer doesn't really provide the type of materials that make it easy to see the detail of these buildings. And for some reason, our commission isn't requiring it, but I wish that they would. There should be some better computerized, real 3D type of modeling that we should be able to look at this far along in this project. And I think ENNA is going to go back and ask for that again as well. It wouldn't be a hardship. We're sure that money is no object to provide that to us. But the further this project moves along, I think it's even more important for people to see besides like a colored, pencil drawing of it. People really need to see what the project is going to look like dimensionally. There were also some modifications regarding some frontage windows and locations on the north side of the building. That would be the building that faces the cemetery. They did say that they had admitted there was a lull in the activity for several reasons, but the activities are expected to resume soon. And apparently they were very active there this morning. I'll talk about that in a minute. And the developers' representatives indicated that the construction activity now will be continuous until completion. They don't believe there'll be any delays going forward. The community in ENNA continues to share concerns about the stormwater runoff. and submitting information to the city. Some of you read in our emails and online as well that every time there's a heavy storm now, we're experiencing brown water and brown muddy slush going into the mill pond. Residents who have lived there for 10, 20, 30, 40 years have said, regardless of massive storms, they have not experienced this. And it only started with the Cemetery Street development. And so we have reported them as violations into the city, requested inspections. We'd rather see a site shut down until it is addressed, but the applicant is told the actual commission that they are compliant with our stormwater runoff regulations. And they very well could be, but then that would beg the question about just how strong those regulations are if we can have that amount of runoff into Mill Pond. I'll mention also that there's still unanswered questions in our minds and in the minds of residents about whether there is a level of contamination that is still on that site that's being disturbed that could be going into the pond. So one of the things that we did following this July 10th meeting was the developer had indicated that they are doing inspections almost daily and responding to making sure that they're complying with the regulations to not have runoff into the pond. And also, they had indicated that the city had been out there frequently as well. And so it's our understanding that when the city is going out to, whichever department it is going out to inspect these sites for potential violations and to be sure that there's compliance, but they are also supposed to be filling out a record of the inspection, the date, the time, the observations, and then, of course, if it resulted in any citation. So we have filed, for all intent and purposes, what's an FOI request with the city to get all of the records to date on the inspections. Steve Kleppen responded today, and he said that he'll be providing those files shortly, so we'll review those. And he is based on some video footage that we took today, that a commuter took today, actually, showing that there was still an enormous amount of dirt and earth there, and alarmingly that the backhoes and everything that were on site this morning at 7:30 were actually pushing that dirt even closer to the pond than it had been. And then you could see I don't know if people saw the horrendous rainfall that we just had a little while ago before this meeting started. So the abutting residents over there are on alert, and people are taking pictures, and hopefully we're monitoring that tonight after the rainstorm. Then Steve Kleppen did say that the city will be committing to weekly inspections. Now, we don't know if that's just the zoning department as part of the zoning permit, or if it also falls under the purview of the building department, because they have also issued permits for this site. And we also are copying the DPW department because stormwater management regulations fall under their jurisdiction for not only creating them, but ensuring compliance. So we're communicating with all three of them. And we are looking to, when the city tells us they'll be conducting weekly inspections, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense, we think, to, kind of say they're going to go every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and take a look at the site, because as we know, subcontractors and stuff, then, when they know a schedule and there's anything untoward going on, we don't want them to know when these inspections are coming. So we're going to ask to be sure that these things are intermittent, scattered during the week, on the weekdays, and unannounced on the day and the hours. One of the things that we haven't done yet, but we hope the city will, or we'll go back to the city to do this, is to also communicate with the inland wetlands department, which reports into zoning, because we feel that if there is a need to report this activity and possible contamination to the DEEP, that we would want the wetlands and conservation officer for the city to do that sooner rather than later, so that the DEP can investigate while these activities are going on. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, and this is also in our e-newsletter, is that near the end of that meeting, first of all, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. For the modifications that the developer presented for the facade and roof and materials and windows, I think it's interesting to note that not one commissioner asked any question about what they were seeing. And I was concerned about that because even as I was watching it, I thought that it wasn't very clear. If you looked at the before or after pictures, I thought it was almost kind of a test to find out, like, can you tell what's different in this picture from the first one? So I didn't think it was very clear, and I was surprised and disappointed that there weren't more questions. But I can say that, again, we want to give kudos to Commissioner ENNA, who at least made an attempt to try to get some information about this runoff and to really kind of push for the issue that this needs to be monitored and inspected and controlled. And we were surprised then too that city staff didn't seem to chime in on that, nor did any of the other commissioners. But thank you to Commissioner Tabashnik, who we know is sometimes always the lone voice of reason, especially, whoops, sorry about this, especially with her concern for her fellow East Norwalk residents. And so finally on this, I wanted to mention near the end of that meeting, and you can watch it yourself because it's not a very long meeting, there was some confusion about a question that was asked by the chair of the commission, Lou Schulman. He wanted to know if there's been any further activity regarding what would have been a public amenity that the developer had to partially fund, that would be kind of a lookout pier that would be built out into the mill pond. And for those who followed this project all the way along, you'll know that the depiction of that would definitely interfere with the ecology of the pond, but also the nesting grounds for some of the wildlife and waterfowl that are there. Because ENNA was told very early on in writing by the DEEP that they would never approve such a structure to be jutted out into that pond, we continued to assume that that amenity would be taken out, and there was some sort of a condition that would be put in that should the city not be able to build that amenity, either financially or because of restrictions, that developer then would take their financial donation. They would be able to take what would have been their financial donation back, and that donation happens to be $25,000. So ENNA, in providing requested to the developer to help mitigate the impact on our community with this development, since they chose not to scale it back. We had asked in writing to them and through their attorney that should this lookout not ultimately be built, which we're certain that it won't, that the developer still be required to fund $25,000 worth of something that would be a direct improvement within the East Norwalk boundary, or to take those funds and to provide them and split them up between local nonprofits that are within our community. Excluding ENNA, by the way, just so that there's no conflict of interest. So we'll keep you posted on that, but we were concerned with this because when the question came up, Director Steve Pepin had said that the city was actually had applied for some grant funds under what is the Norwalk River Valley Trail that probably most of you are familiar with, but they didn't have they weren't awarded that, and that they were looking to reapply for grant money to be able to still take a look at doing this public amenity. However, it did seem like he was still referencing something to do with the Norwalk River Valley Trail. And that particular trail is one that goes from Calf Pasture Beach and ultimately will go to Danbury. It's like a walking, hiking, biking trail that goes all the way along that route. It's being built in bits and pieces. But the Norwalk River Valley Trail in East Norwalk doesn't come anywhere near Mill Pond on the north side. It does come down through, I think it's through First Street or Fifth Street, from Calf Pasture Beach, and then it goes, it touches the edge of Mill Pond where you're at Overton's on Seaview Avenue. And one, we're concerned because we don't know what this reference is to grant money. We don't know why anyone would still be seeking to have grant money to do this public amenity. And three, if there's been any indication that there's going to be another segment of the trail that would then come along Cemetery Street or impact Mill Pond or any of the abutting streets that come up to Mill Pond, we're not aware of it. And so we would be concerned if something like that is happening behind the scene. And of course, we'll get some more clarification on that as well. Okay. Charles, if you see something in chat that I need to stop for to clarify, let me know. But if not, I'll just keep going.
Nothing urgent.
Okay. Okay, and then finally wanted to talk to folks about a project that you may or may not have heard about. It was in the news and we had it in our newsletter. Apparently, political and voting districts have to be realigned from time to time. You may be familiar with periodically the state has to redo some district redistricting so that everything lines up population wise for state representation and then also for federal representation. But as it turns out, the city of Norwalk and all the cities in Norwalk are required by regulation and state statutes to actually make sure that our own municipal districts are balanced according to population and in compliance with the federal and Connecticut Voting Rights Act. And the way that this gets managed is that there is an ordinance within our city charter that dictates there must be a review of each of the 5 districts, that's districts A, B, C, D, and E, to balance out the proportion of the population, so that there's no more than I think the deviation that they use is no more than a 10% deviation when you're looking at the mix within the districts. And part of the goal too is so that you have districts that are balanced so that there's not any watering down, for lack of a better term, than with what are considered to be the minority voting population. So what the city has had to do is, because we've had the 2020 census, the US Census, and apparently the city has not complied in, depending on who you talk to, but possibly decades, we do have to come into compliance with our own ordinance and the state and federal regulations. So the city cleaned up the ordinance, and they put together an RFP to hire a consultant who specializes in this type of work to do reapportionment within cities. They hired a consultant called ArcBridge. You could take a look at them, but they do this type of work all over the country. And very close to us, they've had recently did it in New Haven. And as a part of the process, the city was required to put together a reapportionment advisory committee, part of which is made up of resident stakeholders. And so East Norwalk is lucky to have 2 stakeholders on this small advisory committee, myself and also Scott Goodwin, who I don't know if Scott is on the call tonight, but if you are, you can certainly jump in. The introductory meeting of this advisory committee was on July 8th last week. It was a brief meeting where the consultants reviewed the requirements. They took us through the process of how a reapportionment would get done, went over the Norwalk 2020 census data for each of the districts, And you can see that in the video and in the PowerPoint presentation that we posted online. Based on those numbers, when you take a look at each of the 5 districts, you'll see that District C, which is what we're in, actually is part of the it's a district with probably the smallest amount of population compared to District A, which we butt against basically central and downtown Norwalk, which has a much greater population. And so one of the things that the consultant looks to do is to do balancing of that. And the most likely place is to try to even everything out and reduce the deviation and make the boundaries more fair for representation of the districts, was to take a look at shifting population numbers over from District A into District C. And they presented 2 different options to be able to accomplish the goal. And you'll see both of those options again if you go to your email newsletter, and we can post them. Charles, I think we can post these on our website as well. You can go and see the PowerPoint presentation, the actual PDF of that, and also watch the video. But essentially what they're looking to do is shift along the East Avenue portion of District A, say up where the green is, down to where City Hall is, coming down to Buckingham and Lockwood, and potentially as far south as the highway, where District A already meets District C to the south and to the east. The other option is to just take a portion of that, which is just slightly north, about half of that chunk, and take a little bit more of that and balance out the population. So the advisory committee is going to be taking a look, and there's some other minor changes too that go into District E and down into District B, but we're mostly concerned with District C. So what's going to be happening is we'll be reviewing these recommendations, honing in on the streets that they're recommending move over from A to C, see what that impact would be, and also see what the impact would be on the existing neighborhood associations and the taxing districts. Because one of their goals is to, when they're realigning, they don't want to move a part of the population into either a taxing district or a neighborhood or some other characteristic that just doesn't line up with, what the rest of that neighborhood would be. And so that's part of what we're looking at. We did have to remind the consultants that it's actually kind of funny. The city of Norwalk defines our East Norwalk Neighborhood Association is going well north of the highway. And so, as you know, our association, the literal geographic boundary is the highway. And so even though we include a lot of the 06851 residents in our emails and at our meetings and in our surveys and everything, the association doesn't actually go beyond that boundary. But the city of Norwalk, years ago, when they were doing the master planning, it was easier for them to expand our neighborhood association for the purposes of meeting with stakeholder groups. And for some reason, that version of the map is what the consultants are using. It's not a showstopper, because we've already identified to them that the portions north of the highway along East Avenue do have 2 distinct neighborhood associations that already well represent them, and that we do share some common concerns and goals, and share the concerns about East Avenue with traffic and congestion and development, and we share much of the same ecosystem as well, coming along the residential neighborhoods here. So we'll be working to clarify that. And then in terms of the next step, so the committee members, like I said, will be reviewing the materials and the maps in more details. They're just setting up the meeting schedule again, so we'll be meeting again in the near future. And then ENNA hopes to have that timeline and next steps shortly so folks can follow along with us. But the interesting thing here is that when the city put this out for bid, the respondents and the consultants were told that the city had requested a final deliverable by September 30th of this year. Now, that may be doable because this isn't a particularly information or labor intensive project. But because this doesn't have any bearing, there's no municipal election for this year that anything would impact. And we don't think that it would have an impact until the first of what are any primaries going into 2025. So this is another one of these things where I spoke up where, again, I think we have a vested interest in more of a vested interest in getting this right, because we don't really take another bite at this apple until after the 2030 census. And the materials wouldn't be available really for us until 2031. So I feel that that I'd rather, again, make sure that we're taking enough time to get this right the first time, and instead of then having to wait and try to make corrections. But one important thing to note, though, is the changes that they're talking about between the districts A, B, C, and D, and E don't actually have any relevance to representation on the Common Council. So when you know that you're voting in those districts and you have representatives from those districts, the population shifts are not going to result in less representation on the council in one area and then more in another. The council makeup, unless there's some changes down the road through charter revision, which doesn't have to do with this directly, those districts would remain the same in representation, so there wouldn't be any change there. Okay, so there's a bunch more detail on that, but it's really minutia and gets in the numbers and stuff. So I'd rather, for people who are interested in this, and certainly for our friends north of the highway that join us on these meetings, I don't know if folks are here, but they review the tapes. If you live in the area along East Avenue, north of the I-95, going up to the Norwalk Green and Westport Avenue, then go ahead and take a look and reach out to either me or Scott, and with any questions or concerns or suggestions that you have there. Okay. Oh, and then speaking of District C, thank you, Judy, for this question in there. Actually, I was just thinking about this today because I'll remind folks that both of the District C council representatives had submitted their resignation for family and personal and work commitments, etc. And I know that the appointments that are made through whatever the Democratic Party town committee and the district committee are, and I didn't get a chance to see now if they have actually put people up for to be appointed, and I haven't checked the council calendar yet. Is there anyone on this meeting tonight who happens to know who the representatives are that are being recommended to replace Melissa? And gosh, I'm losing her name. Sorry.
Jen.
The later it gets worse, I get.
Jen McMurray.
Jen, thank you. Thank McMurray and Murray. You can raise your hand if you happen to know. If not, thanks, Judy. We'll find out that information. I believe their resignations were effective this week or last week or very soon. So we'll see who that would be. I know that they do get, there's not another vote on this. And so they do, for the remainder of the term, it's someone who gets picked by that political party. In this case, they were both Democrats. I think that was it for some of the stuff that we just wanted to go over a little bit more in detail. And we can open it up now for questions, comments, concerns. If people want an update on something that we haven't touched on in a while, if there's new business that you want to bring to the attention of the association that you think we can help with or provide information? Anything on, and even outside our area, if you're concerned with something else in the, I know a lot of people were very interested in the O&G application that was withdrawn because of the potential impact on East Avenue, just for our whole community. Um, Anything with Norden or development in East Norwalk? Oh, Jimmy's Deli. I'll mention this too while I'm on here. So the one other outstanding zoning violation of having that big old boat park there at the driveway, that has been resolved. Apparently was moved right before the next possible citation meeting of the code enforcement. And I checked again today, and there's still no permit application that's actually posted on the city website. But we expect that that developer is still working closely with city staff to finalize something that will come through as well. It's apartments. We just don't know how many. Possible candidates.
Okay,
Okay, so Norden Place update and
yes,
Halsted. Okay.
that's it.
Oh, I want to get a show of interest here. I know we're not a big crowd here, but um, so first of all, just to refresh everyone's memory, the Norden project was approved. Thankfully, at the 11th hour, literally at the deadline, um, the the folks who own Halsted Apartments that are next to that complex, they qualified as legal abutters with standing to be able to appeal the approval, and they did do that. They filed that on the last day that they could, and that is now going to wind its way through the court system. Um, the first step of that generally takes a few weeks because it's just kind of maneuvering back and forth with the attorneys on presenting documents and appearing, and any motions to challenge the abutters or motions to dismiss or that type of stuff will be going on. I'm signed up for email alerts whenever the court docket has an update, and there hasn't been any, and I periodically change it as well. Unless there's some sort of a negotiation that goes behind closed doors that we won't be aware of between the City of Norwalk Planning and Zoning Commission and the applicants, which are the property owners of Norden and Halsted. Unless there's some sort of offline negotiations going on in the background, this is going to cycle through the court system. And we have been told by the attorney, by the way, it's the same attorney that we used as a consultant in our opposition attempts. We've been told by the attorney and also by the Halsted, the litigant group, that they would expect this process to take as long as anywhere from like 12 to 18 months. So I don't want to be evasive, but I can say that things can happen quickly and turn around, and negotiations go on and appeals get dropped and things like that. Or this can go on for quite a while, and then it would come down to the courts whether or not the case has been made to send this back to the drawing board and to have the application actually denied probably without prejudice, based on a number of flaws and conditions under which it was approved. And without prejudice means that the applicant can reapply, and in those cases they typically look to remedy whatever the initial issue was. So that's where I have it right now. If anybody else has some more information on that. Oh, the other important thing somebody asked me today that I need to follow up on is, in the absence of a request for an injunction to block any preparation of the site or use of the site under the approved application, I believe that legally the MTA can and may already have been moving in equipment and stuff that's being stored, and prepping the building for future use. But I think one of the goals was to ask the court to prevent that while the appeal was cycling through. And I will get that on my list to make sure we follow up to find out if that's going to happen or not.
But I do have a question regarding Norden. With this lawsuit, will the Department of Parking and Mobility, the DMP, still move forward with those curb cuts for tractor trailers?
I don't imagine that they would be moving ahead with anything because, well, I don't want to say that because there's a certain portion of this that gets linked to these types of applications. But TMP, or Transportation, Mobility, and Parking, was on their own as a city department looking into different configurations of streets in East Norwalk for either safety or for traffic flow or to accommodate large trucks. So if that's what you're talking about, like it fits at Strawberry Hill, the lawsuit wouldn't have any impact on whether or not they intend to do that. But I don't think that they've actually been approved to do that. I think it's still a recommendation that I don't think has gotten the final approval through Traffic Authority.
Okay, there's a question about Metro North taking the property of Norden by eminent domain.
Yep, so two things with that. So this is really confusing. We all, just for the sake of simplicity, continue to refer to the applicants as the MTA. The actual legal applicants for the use of that property was the property owner, Norwalk Center LLC. And because they were the applicant and they're applying for the site plan, they could actually bring in another operator who matches that site plan exactly, and it wouldn't even be the MTA. The MTA simply assisted with the application to get it through zoning. So now, having said that, so the person who was at that little site walkthrough that we did, well, it wasn't even a walkthrough because they wouldn't let us in the building. But the person who was there was a representative of the owner, the fellow who owns Norwalk Center LLC. And so it is the property owner who is the party to this and not the MTA. One of the questions that we had was, we found it kind of interesting through this whole process, is that the DOT and the MTA have the ability to take property through eminent domain because their work is considered in the public good and necessity. You may recall that the DOT recently took the old Hojo's property at exit 16 by eminent domain. They paid a premium price for their taxpayer dollars that none of us are happy with. But I don't see any reason why they couldn't have done that with the owners of Norden. Another thing to understand is that the state and the DOT, they don't have to comply with 99% or maybe 100% of local regulations. And a lot of people don't understand that. They come in under the purview of the state doing a project, and they don't have to comply with lots of things like they have less restrictive noise ordinances, storage, complying with storage things. And so I think it would have been a possibility that they could have done that. Why I don't think it happened is because Norwalk Center LLC still has some sort of a business relationship with the people that you see in the background on this, but who were present at these meetings, which is Craig Beneroff Company. And Beneroff Properties, you may recall, was the same applicant who came through 2 years ago looking to put in a massive warehouse distribution center there. And rather than be denied on that application, they withdrew it. But so even though Norden Center LLC filed the application for this, it was evident that Beneroff is some sort of a party to the ownership of this property and whatever the lease would be to the MTA. In fact, most of you noticed right away that the traffic study that was done by the traffic consultants was actually done for Ben Ralph Properties, not for Norden Center LLC. I'm still not clear on what the relationship is. I kind of asked around that question, but they don't really have to tell us what their, that's not in the public domain for what their business venture is together on that project. But the more concerning thing is, and then I'll get off of Norden now. The more concerning thing is though, even though the city and even the applicants themselves will tell you that there's still a large portion of that building and that property that can be rented for less objectionable uses. One of the things they brought up was another large data center, which was insane because they used that as justification to reduce their future impact on parking and congestion. But one of the reasons we would support that is because data centers are the least impactful type of use that you can have on a community, from environmental, from traffic, from congestion, from noise, and everything else. But what we assume is that the nature of the operation of the MTA facility is really going to only attract like-minded operations, industrial storage, construction storage, vehicle dispatching, because you're not going to want to have offices and things there, or medical offices, or educational facilities that are going to want to be operating in a building and at a site that's going to have that much noise and materials and truck activity, etc. So as much as we're concerned with Norden and hope that this appeal leads to something that actually sends us back to the drawing board and gets denied, we're also concerned about the fact that now this sets a precedent as you know, another use coming in there that could be just as objectionable. Although another use called a transportation maintenance terminal cannot come in there. I may also add that if this does come back and the courts ruled that this should not have been approved, and they you know, issue it as that it should be denied, that because this particular use no longer exists in our regulations as of February 19th, that this applicant cannot come back and reapply for this.
I'm sorry, is there any legal argument to the spot zoning claim, which is?
You know, yeah, you know, I really would hope there would be, but when I talked to the attorney about it, the fact of the matter is you're looking at two separate actions that the city took. The first action was to zone it that way in the industrial zone. And because there was no challenge to that, well, we challenged it, but there was no legal challenge to it. That now they probably maybe could present it as another factor to consider, but I don't know that the judge can take that into account because the city had previously approved that zone for that use. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Two different actions that were there. But it does indict, as far as I'm concerned, it does indict the city, and we get it into the record of the, you know, kind of the underhandedness of how that all took place. Just to remind people, this particular use that this came in under didn't exist before the industrial zone study went in. It was put in there. ENNA repeatedly requested that it come out, and it didn't come out, and then it only came out under the rewrite of the complete zoning regulations. And so they allowed the applicant to file on February, I believe it was February 12th, under the old regulations that had this in there. And had they applied on February 19th or later, it wouldn't have been an allowed use. And that's why ENNA contends that this use was written specifically for this applicant. which would be, spot zoning.
Okay, could the MTA actually purchase the property from the owners?
Sure. Um, that would be a private transaction between them. Well, I'll say private, only kind of semi-private, because the MTA would have to disclose that would have to be in their capital budget, and it would have to be, something that would ultimately be disclosed. Um, but there wouldn't be anything that I know of to prevent them from buying it. What they would really be doing is, I think they would still be essentially taking it under eminent domain. By the way, taking under eminent domain doesn't mean they just come in and take your property away from you. They're still required to pay you under fair market value. Um, Unfortunately, they have their own kind of definition of fair market value. And unless property owners are willing to spend oodles of money in court fighting what is, very often an inadequate compensation for the property, the DOT and the state can get away with it. That's why we were just our minds were just blown when they ponied over $3 million for the Hojo's lot that was valued at valued at $1 million worth of real estate. Your tax dollars, folks, just to remind you.
Okay, one last question in the chat. As the Norden building is boarded up, is that in violation of Norwalk's blight ordinances?
Right. Yeah. So blighted up. Well, it, I'll answer that two ways. Yeah. I mean, we don't want to see boarded up buildings that are long term. If it's boarded up temporarily from a safety point of view, say for, that was flooding or fire or something, then that is allowed temporarily. But it is not supposed to be something that's long term, because then it is considered blight. That property has not been well maintained, by the way, either. So anyone who has been over there or was part of the little, drove in for the tour, you'll see that the property owner has not maintained it well. The grounds and the any of the landscaping and the driveways and the potholes and the building itself, and which always led us to believe just how hard is the owner trying to get some reasonable, less objectionable, companies that would have looked to have gone in there. And it's interesting too. I just shared this the other day with another business owner in East Norwalk, um, who has an interest in kind of redefining their building. I won't say their name though, but one of the things I was talking about is that the state of Connecticut has oodles of money to try to encourage the state to really become a like a data center headquarters for these massive data centers and data security centers. And it's a shame that I feel that our own city and our own economic development team appears not to have been pursuing that, because I think this would have been a real good retrofit for that building, to have something like that. It's good paying jobs, but it's not, thousands of people. And there is an impact in terms of energy use, but that parcel is split. There's a portion of the parcel that actually falls into the third taxing district, which is very economical and reliable electric, and then the other portion of it falls into Eversource. But I also know that there are also private generators up there too that went in conjunction, I think, with when the existing data center went in, the building that you see next to Norden, called Cyrus Data Center. An interesting thing too, and maybe people can think about this offline, but we get asked all the time, as you know, well, if the residents don't want this, and this, then what do you want to see there? And we're always interested in the ideas that folks send in, and we do share them with the city. But it's nice for people just to, like, if you just had your own little exercise around your own dinner table to say, if we could have anything at Norden, what would it be? Send those in to us. even if you think like, oh, we could never do this, I think it's worthwhile to have that list. And if there are other parcels that we have had on our watch list, that you think that you want to have some input into what you'd like to see there, you should do that as well. Again, just to remind people on the current watch list, which of course is Jimmy's Deli on Van Zant, but that's in motion now. Um, the Again, the St. Thomas, not St. Thomas Church, but the St. Thomas school building across the street. The Masonic Lodge, where you're round over to Gregory Boulevard, um, and the parcel at Ludlow Square, the one actually that's owned by the same people that own Penny's and the old Howard Johnson's, where the fire happened there, where you have the strip stores there, and further into Van Zandt Street. I'm trying to think of what the other one was. I think there was one more. Oh, and possibly the what was the former East Avenue United Methodist Church on right at the across the corner from Sweet Ashley's. Right there is around the bend to Van Zandt as well. So those are kind of watch lists if folks thinks that, I mean, we know that the EVTZ zone, which is the transit zone, is designed to encourage residential. But if there's something that you'd like to see, oh, also we have Rite Aid on our own watch list as well. And I think I mentioned this last time that ENNA is starting to look into perhaps the possibility of a small independently operated market there. Should Rite Aid decide to close down that stores are doing so many as well. And then and another thing too, if any of you are following zoning, there's also been more activity on East Norwalk. I'll call it Little East Norwalk or East Avenue. As you pass Sweet Ashley's and you go down East Avenue where it turns in one way, coming out to Seaview, you'll also see that there's been a number of applications there where for expanding, putting in a new house, believe it or not, squeezed in between two existing houses, and also expanding and adding on to some existing properties there. And because the city has reduced parking regulations and all the new zoning really reduces the setbacks and has very little limitations on adding on, we're seeing more and more of that coming up on East Avenue there. In fact, I think there was the public hearing on it maybe last week, or it's coming up on one of the properties there. Okay, and we have no further word yet on the Howard Johnson's lot, except what we already shared last time, which there's been communication and documentation within the city that the state ultimately looks like it'll be turning that over for parking to the city of Norwalk, presumably to be controlled by the Norwalk Parking Authority. And we think it would be a mix of possibly commuter parking and public parking for whatever the future East Avenue developments could be.
Any update on the Masonic Lodge?
Not that anyone has been willing to share. The last thing was months ago regarding the potential purchase by one of the local churches that we absolutely supported. And we had the Masonic Lodge pass that along as well, that we would have supported it. But apparently there were some funding issues with that. That's still on our watch list, by the way, not just because of the Masonic Lodge itself, but because the Masonic Lodge had applied for some zoning regulation changes to the parcel. If you're facing the building, the parcel to the left of it, they own and can be developed into residential housing. And so we've had that on the watch list from 2 points of view. One, what could happen with the Masonic Lodge, but two, also what could happen with residential, especially if Spinnaker sets their site across the street to expand the Mill Pond Place development or a new one. And then very concerned then about the combination, if those two parcels are assembled, what the impact could be for residential development there. We'll keep you posted. Again, we may take a break in August. And I tend to think we'll do that not only for the board, but for the residents as well. But if there's any late minute actions by zoning or any of the city departments that we need attention that we can't just manage via emails, then we'll call a quick meeting. And if not, there will be the next meeting would be the third Monday in September. And our board meeting would actually be before that. Just to remind folks, you can visit us at eastnorwalk.org or on Facebook and Instagram and nextdoor.com. I know we're going to be trying to make a little bit better of an effort to keep the website updated. We found like just getting stuff out as quickly as we can on social media seems to be effective. And then, we really need some more help in content and, kind of converting that content for something that can go easily onto the website. You can also email us at info@eastnorwalk.org at any time. And we try to respond quickly to that. And again, if you have some capacity to volunteer, it doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. It can be just as needed. If you reach out to us and either want to hear about opportunities that you might be to find out if you're interested in, or if there's an interesting, or if there's a part of government that you're particular interest in, like zoning or health or recs and parks, or any of the city to watchdog and help us monitor. We really could use the help on that. And one of the other things that we always need help on is drafting position statements. And we have been blessed now to learn about just how many talented people we have who either do this for a living in terms of writing and communications, or people that just have had some background and very talented. So we really want to kind of spread the love there and be able to get some people to help us out with that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody here. These are actually your meetings, so we appreciate that folks take their time out once a month and join us. And if for nothing else, to listen in and to contribute when you can.